Hello, I'm Stuart Molina. I'm the music director of the Lake Placid Sinfonietta, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today to our virtual recital featuring the incredible Sara Davis Buechner. I'm very, very sad that we didn't have an opportunity to play for you in Lake Placid this past summer. Of course, events precluded us from doing that. But we're very delighted that we've been able to continue keeping in touch with our patrons through our series of videos with our musicians, and now through this wonderful recital. So with no further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the incredible Sara Davis Buechner. Welcome, Sara.
Welcome, Stuart. So nice to see you online where we can talk without masks. That's a lovely, lovely thing. And I am so delighted that this is working out because I have such a deep affection in my heart for the Lake Placid Sinfonietta. I've had a long history of performances there over the years, as you well know. And it's a place that I just adore, going from the wonderful train ride up the Hudson, with the wonderful autumnal colors. And of course, the orchestra is just fantastic. It's non-real and beautiful, beautiful town. It's just one of my favorite things I look forward to all year. So, like so many other things in the summertime, I was so saddened that it couldn't take place. And I love playing with you. I mean, Stuart, you are just. I'm thinking this is one of the first times I've been able to look at your face for a long time. Usually I'm just looking at your backside, because I don't get to see your wonderful smile, when we're working together.
Well, it's fantastic to be back with you, Sara, and everything you say about performing with me goes right back at you. I love you as a collaborator, as a person, as a friend, and it's great to be sharing the virtual stage with you for a short while before you start playing. So what have you been doing with your time during this pandemic? Has it been a period of productivity? What have you been up to?
I'm not sure I would say it's a period of productivity as much as a period of deep reflection. I mean, it's been a terribly difficult period for a lot of people. At the outset of the pandemic, I actually knew 4 people who passed away from COVID, and I know of a few others, spouses and relatives of same. And that was a shock. I was really in shock for a long, long time. I think, like a lot of people. And there were sort of periods of hibernation. And here in Philadelphia, where I'm coming to you from, where I live, one of the great wonders of this city, as we all know, is the takeout pizza. And I've certainly eaten way too much of my share of that over the summer. So we have a little bit of COVID growth to attend to now. Things seem to be sort of slowly, transferring into a more normal realm. So thinking about that. Among the projects that I did undertake is I'm learning a set of 24 wonderful preludes by a Hungarian composer named Péter Wolf. And I've been able to play some of that music for him on Zoom, which is kind of amazing, dialing into Budapest and playing. By the way, the audience is seeing my great videographer, Hugh Sung, in the background, adjusting cameras. And there he is. Yeah. Hugh was your classmate at Curtis, I believe.
That's right. Hugh was studying piano when I was studying conducting, and it's great to be seeing him again after all these years.
Lurking around at the background.
That's right. Hovering.
Anyway, there were projects like that I've been working on, but I'm getting ready for my first real concert in many, many months. I'm going to play up in Syracuse pretty soon.
Oh, fantastic.
In E-flat major. And it'll be a strange hybrid kind of thing with, plexiglass partitions and a limited audience, and there'll be a video component and so forth. So it's all sort of Brave New World. It's Brave New World for my students at Temple University where I'm teaching, and playing concerts like this out of my home, which, on the one hand, it's less than optimum in terms of acoustics, and you have to make sure that the piano's tuned and so forth. But there's a part of me that feels like I'm transported back to about 1938, living in the Drake Apartments, which is an Art Deco building, and I sort of see Fred and Astaire up here with their cocktails, and I see they have one of those microphones with the call letters above it, and said, "Welcome listeners, high above the streets of Philadelphia, KSDB from Center City, Philadelphia, from the Drake Apartments and Ballroom." I really want to do one of those great old breakfast radio shows with music and chat, so that's where we find ourselves today.
Well, in a sense, we're very fortunate that there are these technologies to allow us to do things like this. I've been often wondering, what would this have been like 25 years ago, and how much more difficult continuing on, particularly with the arts and business, would have been. So in many senses, I suppose we're fortunate, but boy, the overall, I cannot wait for this to be done.
I think many people feel the same way. And just last week, I had a playing class for my students, and it was the first time any of them had heard a live performance in a hall. I mean, socially distanced and everything, but it was kind of overwhelming. Some of them were in tears, just to hear the live music in that kind of a space. I think we all will be coming out of this with a greater appreciation of the creative arts and what it means for us all, because it's been such a long period of silence, which has been very difficult.
Yeah.
With that somewhat in mind, I put together a program today of works to emphasize the idea of youth and renewal and regeneration. These
Love it.
Concepts. We were going to play a Beethoven concerto, so I thought I'd best start with Ludwig, and I'll be playing his Pathétique Sonata. It's one of his early works, Opus 13, featuring lots of Sturm und Drang and empfindsamer Stil and so forth. A very dramatic, youthful work, which probably has as much to do with the political and artistic climate of Vienna in 1790 as it also has to do with maybe just his anger at his own father. There's a lot of psychological angst getting worked out in this particular piece. And I've always loved it, particularly as my brother, who's a little older than me, used to practice it when we were kids. And I wanted to play it, so I would steal his music, start playing it, and then I'd get yelled at. Don't play your brother's music, So it was a little verboten. So I get to work out a few little angst of my own playing the Pathétique. And then a very youthful work of Chopin, which is a little less known, his introduction in Rondo, Opus 16, which is one of these things that he wrote when he was like 17 years old, and tucked into his briefcase and brought it to Paris along with the first two piano concertos and his etudes, and sort of dazzled the world. And it's a piece that has wonderful youthful vigor and fingers go flying and so forth. And then following that for sentimental reasons with the Ballade number 3. And then lastly, some Gershwin. But we can chat a little bit before the Gershwin. That's kind of a longer story before. But I think if we're ready, Hugh, I'll start with the Beethoven Pathétique Sonata.
Terrific. And I should point out as well that for our watching and listening audience, if you're enjoying yourselves and feel so inclined, please visit the website of the Lake Placid Sinfonietta, lakeplacidsinfonietta.org. And if you feel like making a donation, anything would be very much appreciated. And now, beautiful music of Beethoven. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, Stuart. Stuart, I neglected to mention in my intro about the music playing today. You know, sometimes people, especially watching online, and here I'm playing my piano in my own home, and of course people, they listen to the music, but they also sometimes think about, oh, what is the performer thinking, or what does it mean to them? You know, these kind of inside dope things. You know, and there's this one part in the Pathétique that I'm not really ashamed to say it was used in an episode of Perry Mason, where the murderer is pushing a car with a dead body off a cliff. And I think of that every time I mean, it's so perfectly scored for that. So when people ask me, what do you really think of the interpretation of Beethoven's Pathétique, I say, Raymond Burr. That's, you know, it's clear enough. Yeah. You look a little puzzled by that. That's all right. Oh, I see. All right. All right. So I just offered that freely. As mentioned, I'll continue this recital with some music of Chopin, the Rondo, Opus 16, which is in E flat major, and then the Ballade number 3 in A flat major. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, virtual audience. Thank you,
That was
mass listeners.
spectacular.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
that's really quite the right hand show off thing, and it
Well,
tells you and it tells you how influenced Chopin was. Of course, he was influenced by Bach and Mozart and the greats, Hummel as well. But when he got to Paris, he was snowed by these people like Kalkbrenner and Hertz, who had these dazzling fingers, and he started to put a lot of that into his piano music as well. You know, on top of all the other stuff, and then he pretty much eclipsed them in the short order, I
well,
think.
the leap in composition that you see in these early pieces is astonishing. That's a piece I've never heard before, believe it or not.
Yeah,
And
I didn't know what there are actually three rondos by Chopin. The Opus 1 is his rondo in C major. Then the Opus 5, a beautiful piece, Rondo a la Mazurka. It's kind of a rondo mazurka. And then this one. And then he seems to have abandoned the form except for the finales of his two piano concertos. So it's all
so
about
delightful.
youthful impetuosity. Yes.
And let me apologize for before. I actually found myself in a technical nightmare where I couldn't get my microphone to work. So that's why I was looking so confused.
That's
So at any
part
rate,
of our
thank you so much
Perry
for that
Mason.
beautiful Chopin.
Well, that's okay. You missed the Perry Mason joke, but I'll fill you in on that one
and,
another time.
and you have more Chopin to play for us, don't you?
Yes, now I'll play the third ballade in A flat major. This is one of my very, very favorite works. I've played it most of my life actually. There are of course four ballades, and they are somewhat mysterious in a sense as to what kind of pieces they are. Chopin seems to have picked that title out of the realm of poesy, shall we say. And one of the most delightful things, well, that you can do is buy the Salabert edition, which is edited by Alfred Cortot. And you get the music as well as even more. I mean, I think the text, the accompanying text that he provides is many more pages than the music. And he goes on in the most beautiful, delightful French about stories of mountains and heroes and maidens and lost romance. And so all of which has nothing to do with Chopin, but it's the most beautiful French reading you can possibly have. And so my head is full of such parfumerie, shall we say. With that having said, the third ballade. Thank you so much.
Does anyone know how to finish a piece like Chopin? The end of that piece is so dazzling and exciting and constantly fresh.
Well, it's a it's one of those perfectly conceived pieces. It starts on a certain slope and it takes you on many beautiful places and then leads you to that very very grand climax. Yeah, it's just perfectly proportioned. But that's the kind of thing that we're very very lucky as musicians. We get to work with creations like this all the time that stare at us and speak to us of great beauty and perfection. We're very humbled by that, and the older I get, the more humbled I am. So,
Well, talk a little bit about that process of coming back to a piece so many times. I mean, this is a piece that I'm sure you've been playing for many years. And do you have to struggle to maintain freshness, or do things just of themselves come to you?
I feel like with aging, that's one of the great graces. Physically, we all know that bodies do things as we age. So, when I was young, I thought, well, I'll practice a lot so that when I get older, I won't have to practice so much. Wrong. Anything I have to practice much more just to stay in shape and keep up with my own students and things like that. But as far as the musical insights and so forth, I did struggle a lot when I was a student to really divine the intent of a piece and to understand the composer's message and so forth. But as the years go by, I feel like it's just like unpeeling an ever growing fruit or something. You just keep finding new ripe layers, and I don't really struggle. If it's something that I don't really connect with, I simply won't play it.
Sure.
But Chopin is one of those composers that everyone loves, and so I played a lot of it when I was a kid, and I always will. It's just Mozart, Chopin. These are sort of bedrocks for me. So
It's an embarrassment of riches for the pianist. The amount of magnificent music that's been written for that instrument is it's a bottomless pit.
it is it's a snake pit, but it's a bottomless one. It's very, very true, and we tend to think about the orthodox piano repertoire, but the colorful composers I can also never get enough of, people like Poulenc and Cherubina, and even Dvorak's wonderful Dvorak piano music. People generally don't play very much, and there's untold riches. I mean, the more you learn, the more you want to learn. So it's like going into the restaurant, and when do you stop eating? Well, I think when they close the casket is when the meal.
I'm with you there. So there's actually a nice thread between Chopin and Gershwin, who you're going to be going to. They both were people that loved going to parties and entertaining their friends. And I just love imagining being at one of these parties and George Gershwin or Frédéric Chopin sits down and just starts playing. So do you want to talk a little bit about your last pieces that you'll be performing?
Absolutely, because that's exactly the kind of things that he would play at these parties. When Gershwin became overnight very, very famous, first with the song Swanee and then on its heels, Rhapsody in Blue, he was the toast of Manhattan. And to have a socialites party in Manhattan, was not a success unless you got George Gershwin to come. Everyone knew that George Gershwin, upon entrance to the apartment, if he saw the piano, he would race to it. He would literally run to the piano, and he would push people off the bench to get to it. People like Rudolf Frimmel, Sigmund Romberg, Jerome Kern, Irving Berlin, didn't matter. Off they went, and George would sit and start playing foxtrots for hours and hours and hours. And he honed and learned these foxtrots when he was still a teenager, a lad of 14, 15, 16 years old. He would get on the boat to cross the Hudson River and go over to New Jersey, where they made player piano rolls. And he made these by the fistful, some 250 to 300 of them. We're still finding some. I mean, it's amazing. Many of them won his own early melodies. Many of them won songs of Kern and Berlin, who he loved very, very much. And they're always... He cut some records of these as well, and they're meant for dancing. They're in foxtrot style to be danced to. These three, it's kind of an interesting bag. The first one is called Do, 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 with the clever lyrics by Brother Ivor. Do, do, do what you've done before. And that's followed by a non-song, an instrumental piece. He seems only to have recorded for a player piano roll called Novelette in fourths. And using the interval of the fourths, he was clearly alluding to what was called Oriental music of the day, or at least Duke Ellington called it that. That would be music that used these kind of intervals. Okay, now, this is a little not so PC these days. But forget the Genesis, and it's a very, very charming and little known Gershwin piece in Foxtrot style. And then the last one is something I always play when times are dour. It seems like there's been a lot of those lately. It's called Kicking the Clouds Away. And I feel like it's a very optimistic number that heralds better things to come, shall we say. So I'll play these in rapid succession. And yes, you can picture Fred and Ginger behind me with their martinis. And we'll talk to Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein all about it on the radio after the show.
Wow,
Thank you so
that
much.
is some good-humored music. I love it.
That'll put you in a chipper mood. Yes, yes,
It
that's
sure does.
not a bad idea.
It really does make you want to meet this man who created this music, who played like this. I mean, everyone who heard him play said that of all the great stride players of the time, he just had something very special in his hands, that he was able to make music sound light and cheery.
I think it was Oscar Levant said of his friend George Gershwin. He said life for George was just one big party, and it never ended. You know, I think it was like that for him. I think also for Fats Waller, I think had a similar kind of
Yep.
existence. I think these people just they lived to play that piano and play that piano. They certainly did. And for George, I mean, the songs, the tunes. There's a story about him at one of those Manhattan parties when someone you can sort of imagine some sort of beefy guy, probably with a cigar or something of the time, saying to him, "Well, George, where do you see your place in musical history?" And without missing a beat, George Gershwin said, dead seriously, he said, "Oh well, I am the greatest songwriter since Schubert." And there was this gasp around the room and general feeling that George had really said something rude and really stepped on some holy boundaries there or something like that. And yet, that statement is absolutely true. I take it at perfectly face value. I think George Gershwin knew exactly who he was and what the level of his talent was. I mean, you look at those two composers, it's really kind of amazing. Schubert lived to 31, Gershwin lived only to 39. And each of them wrote in excess of 600 songs, almost any one of which is instantly recognizable within the first 8 to 12 bars because their gifts of melody were so absolutely precise. So I think
It is incredible.
uh,
And if you look at the last year of Gershwin's life and the masterpieces that he was putting out, day after day after day, and you think, what if he had lived for one more month, let alone 10 more years? What gems we would
you can
have.
posit this about certain geniuses like Mozart is another one
Mozart.
who died at 35, and Gershwin. I think of the two of them, if they had lived long, full lives, it would have been to the detriment of many composers because they would have written everything. You know? And
It's
both of them,
probably
by the way, Mozart wrote a sort of an experimental 12-tone G at the end of his life, and Gershwin also was experimenting. He was studying with Schoenberg and studying the systems of Schillinger, so really, really expanding their horizons. I mean, who knows what they would have done with that sort of stuff? I mean, who knows? We'd be singing all those great melodies of Schoenberg now.
well, I hope we'll be singing those tunes of Gershwin for many, many years to come. And boy, you play them like a dream. Thank you
Oh,
so very much for sharing your talent with us today, Sarah.
you're so kind, Stuart. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the Lake Placid Sinfonietta and Deborah Fitz and all the players in the wonderful orchestra that I adore. And so we'll sign off from Philadelphia here, and hopefully see you very very soon, Stuart.
I look forward to it. And I'd like to thank as well M&T Bank for their wonderful underwriting of this event. And one more reminder to all of you, if you feel like making a donation to the Lake Placid Sinfonietta, the website is on your screen, lakeplacidsinfonietta.org. We appreciate any donations we get. We are a nonprofit orchestra, and we depend on your generosity to keep going. But boy, I cannot wait until next summer to be together in person and playing with this wonderful orchestra some wonderful music. So many, many thanks again, Sarah, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you,
And
Stuart.
goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining.